and then I'll let the person in. Ago Ahwaba Medasi, welcome, greetings. We sincerely hope that everyone is achieving your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual health today on this Sunday. And we thank you for joining us for the 8/15/2021 edition of Our Ancestors' Voices. Today, our topic is why some Black people, quote unquote, reject African origins. We again are thankful for all of you for joining us today for this very critical and important topic. We start, as we always do, by giving thanks and acknowledgement to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. We will obviously talk about that term indigenous today, but we are talking about the people who identify as American Indian people, Mexicanos, Puerto Ricanos, etc. These are the actual indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. Anyone else who claims that is just someone who is denying colonial history. And Africans that say that are people, as we'll talk in great depth over the next hour, who generally have a very limited understanding of African history and feel the need to compensate for that somehow. So this is why we're here. And of course, we always acknowledge our African ancestors, and we want to start by just doing a brief moment of silence for the people of Haiti. If you have not heard, they had another devastating 7.0 Richter scale earthquake there yesterday. They still have not recovered from the one they had of the same magnitude in 2010. So just a brief moment of silence right now for our people in Haiti. Thank you for that. For people that do not have a Pan-Africanist consciousness, then for you, that might just be, well, something bad happened to some people in another part of the world. It's unfortunate. But for us, that's our family. Those are our people. Those are people who we were on the same slave ship with. Some of those folks in Haiti are probably, or not probably, most definitely biologically related to us here on this plantation here in the United Snakes of America. So we also pay great homage to the African people in Haiti because of the example of resistance that they've given us. August is Black August, commemorating Black August, which we did last week for our ancestors' voices. And it would be efficient and correct to argue that Black August actually began with the Haitian Revolution, which took place in 1804. And so we acknowledge the example of resistance that the Haitian people, the African people in Haiti, have provided to us for all of these centuries. And we give our support and all of the material, human, spiritual resources we can to help the people of Haiti recover. And that's a part of our respect and appreciation for all of our African people. And you cannot do that unless you respect our African ancestors, because they are the reason that we are here. They're the reason that we are still fighting. The people of Haiti today are a reflection of our African ancestors who stood up and ran the French out of Haiti in 1804. And that was the first demonstration of the eradication of chattel slavery in the Western Hemisphere. This backward United Snakes of America was one of the very last countries in the entire Western Hemisphere to eradicate slavery. They didn't do it until 50 some odd years after that. So we thank the people of Haiti. We thank our family members in Haiti, and our thoughts are with them as always. And we thank you for joining us today for this appropriate edition of Our Ancestors' Voices, why some Black people reject African origins. And we will just get started with our usual introductions. I am Ahjamu, organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the organization that sponsors Our Ancestors' Voices every week. And I've been an organizer for the party for quite some time and will continue for as much time as I have left. Shukura, my daughter, is with me, as she is every week. And she is also an organizer in the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And just thankful, honored, and appreciative to share this organizing space with her every week, throughout the week, every day in our relationship. So just honored to have this type of relationship with my only child, and look forward to continuing to grow and develop and work with her. And then again, the objective of the AAPRP is Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa, one unified socialist Africa. We believe that until that objective is achieved, no person of African descent anywhere on earth will ever have freedom and self-determination. It will not just happen in the United States or in Haiti or Cuba or Panama or Belize or Brazil, Canada, Britain, France, Germany. It won't even happen in Nigeria or Tanzania or Ethiopia. It will only happen when all of Africa is free, united, and socialist. And if you want to understand more about our Pan-Africanist objective, as always, we encourage you to study Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which you see at the top right there on the screen. It is the book that serves as the blueprint for how we strategically achieve revolutionary Pan-Africanism. And in that book, Nkrumah speaks of uniting all of the revolutionary Pan-Africanist formations on the ground in Africa. You see the logos of some of them there on your screen. And that is the work that we engage in, and building capacity and strength so that we can create this worldwide fighting force of Pan-African revolutionaries who agree with that objective, one unified socialist Africa. So that is the work of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. It's not work that you're gonna see talked about on CNN or CIA or any of that, but this is what we do, and this is what we are committed to doing, and what we will be successful in doing. And then we have chapters worldwide, and we also have relationships with other liberation movements that are fighting against the same enemies that we are fighting for. It doesn't require anything of us to support we lose nothing by supporting other liberation movements. We gain everything, because when they strike a blow for justice, that helps our struggle. So when we say that we support the Palestinian people, for example, yes, we support them because it's the correct thing to do. It's the right thing to do from a human standpoint, but it's also practically correct, because the enemies that they face, the Zionist state of Israel, are the same enemies that we face as African people. So it makes sense, common sense, for us to support their victory, because that's a victory for us. So we thank you again for joining us today, and we will go ahead and get started as we always do. We're gonna build our foundation with Shukura.
Good day to you all. Just echoing my dad, we hope that you are in good spirits now more than ever. We need you all, and we need you all to make a decision on what side of the fence you are on. So we hope that you are in good spirits and safe, healthy, and well, because in order to make that informed decision, you need to be the best version of yourself, so that we can collectively come together and resist all forms of oppression. So with that being said, the focus of this week's section is on this trend among African, or as some people might refer to themselves as Black people. It's a trend based on capitalist-inspired disdain for legitimate intellectual work, study, and development. It's a trend that suggests obtaining a PhD from watching YouTube videos is sufficient in understanding the forces that impact our lives, without ever developing the ability to critically develop thinking skills and comprehensive analysis. An example of this that our focus today is designed to debunk is this YouTube generated perspective by some that there is some significant number of people of African descent who do not descend from Africa. So already you can see the oxymoron, right? That there are African people who exist within the Western Hemisphere who have always been here, and that there are actually a significant percentage of us who have never had a connection to Africa. The basis of this argument is rotted in the circumstantial evidence and conspiracy theories with no basis in material reality and truth. We are taught that being intelligent has consequences and drawbacks. So I want us to really unpack this. What is the threat of seeking information and being intellectual? What is that? So for people who are considered intellectual because they are seeking information, they're trying to find the truth. People who are characterized as smart are known as, quote, know-it-alls. That's a drawback. Or, quote, show-offs, right? We think that they think that they are better than others because that's how we perceive them. But what defines a smart or intellectual person? Like, let's really look at that and unpack that. So if a person is critical and therefore intelligent because they are able to have a critical analysis and a comprehensive analysis of information that they consume and take in, one, that means that a critical, intelligent, or intellectual person would have the ability of understanding the importance of finding truth. So right there, we need to understand that what we do need to look at is finding the truth, because what we have in front of us is thousands and thousands and centuries, really not even thousands, centuries of lies that have been built on top of one another. Kwame Ture said it best: the system lies to you all the time. And even when the system is telling you the truth, it's only because they're covering up a lie that they previously told you. So this idea of a critical, intelligent person being able to understand the importance of finding truth and then using evidence to support the validity of the truth. Why is that a bad thing? Let's really think about that. Why is that a bad thing? And why are we socializing our children to think that that's a bad thing? Why are we socializing and conditioning one another to think that using evidence to support the validity of something is bad? The second reason that we really should seek to be critical and not seek information from YouTube, but really try to find it from credible sources, is that people who are able to do that because they are critical, because they are intellectual, they understand that even once they find the truth, they should still develop an analysis on evidence based on what they found. So even when you find something that you think is truthful, you should still be critical of it. That's what I'm learning in work study, is as we have read 2 different books by Kwame Nkrumah, and I'm fathomed with him. I'm learning so much about his contribution and what he did, but I'm still critical of the choices that he made because that's what he would want me to do. That's what he would want me to do. He wouldn't want me to just accept what someone presents to me. And he definitely wouldn't want me to accept it if it's not based on truth and if it's not based on something that benefits humanity. So for people who are critical because they understand intellectual benefits, and they are critical because they understand that not all truths are based on such truth, that means you have to be critical even on what you find, because that's how you develop an analysis to see if the evidence is actually something that's going to help move the people forward and reduce oppression, or is it going to protect and promote oppression? We need to be very clear about that, because as Malcolm said, sometimes information is presented to you either as a wolf or as a fox. Now, you might think that one is more carnivorous and one might actually harm you more, but the fact of the matter is they both have intentions of killing you because they see you as prey. So you have to be aware that just because something is presented to you and it looks polished and manicured, that doesn't mean that A, is based on truth or evidence, and B, that certainly doesn't mean that your best intention was the design method of how said information was presented to you. You could just be a pawn on a chessboard, or you could just be a bystander. So you have to make a decision, comrades. That's what I said at the beginning of this talk. We all are at a crossroads and we have to make a decision. The third thing I'll say about people who show critical intellectual capabilities is that they must also be critical because they understand that things might not be always what they seem and can look differently when other variables are considered. So we have to think about this capitalist, cis, heteropatriarchal system and how it is fixed, literally built on finding and hiding the truth from the rest of us. That's how this system was built, literally on the backs of oppressed people, okay? So we have to understand that. We have to understand that the system is very good at hiding the truth from us. We have to understand that the system is very good at stirring up confusion. We also have to understand that they are good at doing those things because the system and people who benefit from the system, they know that when we begin developing skills to think critically, the critical skills will help us start to question things. Once we start questioning things, that's a good thing. And that will cause us to start thinking about things. Once we truly begin thinking about things, we can unpack why we have the customs that we have, why we can unpack the traditions and the norms that we have. We can unpack why we use the colonialization language that we use. We can unpack all these things to help us figure out, okay, so why have we been doing this for thousands of years? And should there be a better way to do this where people are not oppressed at the outcome of said decision? We need to understand that. And once we understand that, based on this new evidence, based on truthful information that we have found, we have more of a foundation for why we need to do things differently. And another way to think about that is I've shared this story with you all before, but in my line of work, I work with college students. And sometime last year, I think it was right before the pandemic, the students were exiting the classroom for unthanksgiving. Now, I say unthanksgiving on purpose. We've given seminars on the problems with supporting capitalist holidays. We've also given seminars on understanding that this so-called holiday is based on raping people. It's based on killing and murdering people. It's based on stealing a whole group of people's land. And it's based on lying about doing all of that. And so I'm so glad that my parents did not raise me to celebrate an absolute atrocious holiday, because it is not a holiday when you can celebrate someone else's death. And we need to really unpack that. So I say unthanksgiving intentionally, family. I'm not mistaken when I say that. And when I say it to my students, they are very confused because they don't understand why I'm giving it a different title than what they have been socialized to understand it to be. So they literally said to me walking out the door, "Happy blank, Miss Umi." And I said to them, "You all be safe. I hope to see you when you come back, and have a great break. Get some rest." That was all I said. One student pushed back and said, "You're not going to wish me a happy blank back?" And I said, "No, because I don't celebrate that." "You don't celebrate blank?" And I said, "No, I don't. And you shouldn't either, actually." "What? What do you mean, Miss Umi?" I said, "Well, what does the holiday mean? What is it based on?" Coming together, family, love. Okay, those are all lies. Those are all lies. We need to understand that and unpack that. So I said, "So-and-so, that's what you've been taught to think, but you have to be critical and understand it's your responsibility to find the truth." And so then I started giving this person examples of how the holiday was based on killing and murdering people. I gave examples of how it was based on raping innocent people. I gave examples of that. I also gave the example that this is not the European land like they say it is, but it's actually the indigenous people's land. And then I said, and I have an article that would actually go into more detail about this. If you're interested, I can send it to you. But I'm not going to email it to you for no reason, and you're not even going to read it. This person asked me to send the article, and true to form, when we came back from the break, they said, "Miss Umi, I have a new understanding. I have a lot of questions, and I really don't understand because my parents never talked to me about this. And when I brought it up to my parents, they had no idea what I was talking about." So you just have to take a 20-something-year-old person who's been on this world for 2 decades, and I literally broke their brain when I shared this concept with them, right? So I think the good news is this person was interested in getting the information and then actually read the article. But the bad news is how many other people are like that person and how many other people are much older and like that person. We have to think about that, family. We have to really think about the danger of that. When we question things and we think about things in more depth and we unpack things with the intent to change old ways, that helps us to not only devalue capitalism, but we're no longer promoting and protecting it, because we're actually trying to work on changing conditions for oppressed people. We must all be willing to do that, though. That's going to take all of us to do that. We must all be willing to seek truth and change current practices. We cannot be scared of learning. We cannot be scared of learning. And I don't mean learning from YouTube, because anyone can go to YouTube and look up a video that is not based on credibility. I'm saying we have to go to the source. We have to pick up Kwame Nkrumah's book, Ghana if we want to learn about Ghana reaching its independence. We have to pick up books on speeches by Malcolm. We have to pick up books by Elaine Brown. We have to pick up books by Assata Shakur. We have to pick up the source, because who else knows these people's lives and the contributions they did better than them? No one else knows that. And no one else can truly capture it the best way, except for that person that walked the mile in those shoes. No one else can do that. So it's up to us to find that information, though. That's not going to be on YouTube. Now, you might watch the interview my dad did with Assata Shakur on YouTube. That's fine. But I would still implore you to pick up her autobiography, because it's life-changing. And I've read it twice in my life, and I had a different perspective the second time I read it. So just imagine if I had read that book 5 or 6 more times, how much different I would look at the world and how much more information I would have. The first time I read it, I was 16. So there were a lot of things I didn't understand about what Comrade was saying. But now that I'm older, I understand what this comrade was saying. So just think about that and don't be afraid to learn. We can't be afraid of learning, and we can't be afraid of unlearning the lies. We can't be afraid of that. We have to dive right into the deep, into the water. We have to dive in, because you already know it's based on lies. You already know that. So we don't need to be surprised when we find out that things are not based on truth and humanity. Don't be surprised about that. You already know that. We have to understand that. We have to also understand that when we question things and we think about things in more depth, that allows us to unpack things with the intent to change the old ways that do not promote and protect capitalism, which means we would uncover thousands of lies and force people to rise up and organize. Usually, just as my dad just said, when you do that, then you're forced to work with other oppressed people, because you start to understand that your situation is not unique and that it only happened to you and your population group of people. You start to learn that it's happening to thousands of people. Africans are not the only ones who had their land stolen from them. There's plenty of people who've had their land stolen from them. So why would you intentionally only organize with African people when you can organize with other people who also empathize and sympathize with you, because they too have experienced the same theft of their land being taken? There's power in numbers. We know that. So we have to think about that and think about the benefits of us coming together to push back stronger. We have to think about that, because when we all come together to push back, the system is tired and the system can't handle it. The infrastructure of the system cannot handle all of us organizing together and pushing back. When we do that, we're going to tear down the system and we're going to end it. We're going to put an end to it, and there's not going to be any more oppression. So whether you identify as a European and you identify as being a poor European, if you identify as a non-man person, if you identify as an African, an Asian, an indigenous, a Palestinian person, if you identify as a man who is interested in ending oppression, whatever your positionality is, it's up to all of these groups of people, because we all suffer from white supremacy, including Europeans. We all suffer from white supremacy. So it's up to us to understand that suffering from capitalism, suffering from imperialism, suffering from neocolonialism, not just colonialism, but neocolonialism, it's up to all of us to take a stand. We have to, family. You cannot straddle the fence anymore. And if you're not ready to fight with us, that's okay. Maybe you need to stand back and do some more research so that you can get fired up, and hopefully you can come join us when you're ready. But we have to take a stand here, because people are literally dying. They are not breathing air anymore. And we need to do more to help stop that. All of these groups organizing and fighting together, this system would have no choice. It would crumble in a heartbeat. Just think about how fragile the US is now. The US is dependent on Europe and Israel, for example. And that's because of their exploitation around the world. So let's just take Africa, for example, and the fact that they exploit Africa for rubber, the fact that they exploit Africa for cobalt, the fact that they exploit Africa for diamonds. Diamonds are a big seller in Israel, as a matter of fact, and they go to Africa all the time and steal all of the diamonds in Africa and take them back to Israel. So if we resisted neocolonialism and all the countries that produce diamonds in Africa, do you have any idea how messed up Israel would be? Because that's their foundation for how they benefit from their wealth. And then Israel is putting money in the US's pockets and the Europe pocket. So if they're not putting money in US's pocket and Europe is not putting money in US's pocket, and nobody is benefiting from these diamonds being sold at the stolen exploitation of Africa, then what would that do for those three countries if they no longer have a reliable source of income to get their money from? We can do that. It's not only been done before, it will continue to be done, but we have to understand what our responsibility is. And part of our responsibility is understanding it's up to us to find the truths. It's up to us to understand that we cannot allow the colonizer to give us the information that we need, because they are not going to give us what we need. They're going to send us down a rabbit trail to derail us from the truth. Next slide. When we say circumstantial evidence, what we mean is that these videos, et cetera, use pictures of actual indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere and African people who resemble each other physically as their evidence, along with other sad theories about their alleged loss of slave ships and other baseless conspiracy theories. We all know that we can find people of different ethnicities who resemble each other. So that's an extremely weak argument. And the research on lost slave ships has been done by African scholars for centuries in Africa, Europe, and the Americas is overwhelming, except to those who never pursue any type of qualified research on anything. In other words, if it's not prepackaged in a crafty made video, they ain't looking for it. The fundamental basis of this confusion is something very few of these people are ever going to admit or talk about. This is undeniably a fact that the people promoting these lies have no knowledge, of African history, and therefore are not only working with the backward analysis provided to them by white supremacy about Africa, but they are more than willing to protect the white supremacy lies and feed them to you and I, just like we would eat supper at the dinner table. Accepting any truth causes you to have no standards. After all that your ancestors and you have been through, you owe it more to yourself than to just accept any old story of what happened. Verification has a negative connotation. Verification and verifying information can be a lot of hard work at times. And some of us are scared of that, but we can't be scared anymore. It can be tedious and it can be scary. So what? It's up to us to find the truth. We deserve the truth. Once we have the truth, then we know that at what cost we deserve it. We know that once we find the truth, we're more capable of handling the oppressor. And then we can resist the struggle with more information under our belts and on our backs. But when we lack the truth, we're more likely to accept lies and do nothing. The danger of accepting lies is that you begin to believe them and you embody them, such as, quote, African women identifying people have higher pain tolerances. I've never heard anything more absurd in my life. But that's a lie that has been promoting and resuscitating and regenerating itself for generations to come. And we know that there are people who truly think that to this day. That's because they don't know how to be critical and actually find information that resists that. They don't know how to actually think about finding information that's based on truth, to think about how no one would be able to have a high pain tolerance when you think about the unethical slave experimentations that were done on African women, which is where that concept came from. But you have to do the research to find that out. I did, because I wanted to know. I was very interested in finding the idiot who said that that was a thing, Marion Sims, my behind. So we have to think about that. We have to think about why it's dangerous to hear someone say, quote, slavery was a choice. That is extremely dangerous, comrades. There's no way you can tell me that you believe that. There's no way. And by the same argument, if slavery was a choice, which we know it wasn't, but if it was, then why is there another lie out that says African people didn't fight back? Those two contradict each other right there. So we have to really just unpack this. You don't have to just accept what the oppressor gives you. I know that's what the oppressor taught us, and then they beat the heck out of us when we didn't, but it's a new day. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of getting beat. I am tired of getting beat. So yes, I'm putting myself on the line and I'm saying things and I'm doing research and I'm finding information and the FBI is tracking me. Yes, but my legacy is important to me, comrades. And that's the question I have for you. What kind of legacy are you going to leave if you're not willing to search for the truth? If you're not willing to go to the source, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Secretaries, the Assata Shakurs, if you're not willing to find the non-binary comrades out there who have fought and put their lives on the lines, the Teodora Gomes, the Fernando people in Cuba, if you're not ready to do that, what are we going to say about you when you die? Because I personally want people to say that I fought till there was no more oxygen in my body. And even when I didn't have any more oxygen, I still want to take someone out. Because that's what my ancestors did for me to be sitting here right here today at 6:29 Central Time talking to you all. Asante Sana.
Thank you very much, Shukura, for what I think is a very critical foundation. It's a foundation of really understanding that we really don't know how to do research. to get to the truth. We don't know. And I'm tired of hearing that. Well, I'm going to do some research on it. You don't know what the hell that means when you say that. You know, let's be honest. Like, most people couldn't even tell you, not to mention actually do it, but couldn't even tell you how to engage in researching something. That's a process, you all. Those are skills you have to have. And anybody can have the skills. Not arguing elitism here, not saying, well, you have to go to these bourgeois educational institutions to gain the skills. That's not true. Anyone can have the skills, but you have to do the work to acquire the skills to know how to actually engage in research, to know how to take a topic, to develop differing analytical perspectives of the topic, to evaluate the quality of the information that you're reviewing about the topic, and then to be able to explain the sources where you're getting your information, why what you believe is correct, why what you believe is not correct, and to be able to present that in a cognitive argument. That's a process. And most of us have no idea how to do that. When most of us say, well, I'm going to do research, that's what Shukura said. I'm going to watch a video on you. That's not research. That's not what that is at all. That's not even close to that. So that's what we have to, we really got to grapple with, because this whole question of Africa and what Africa means to us here, it's indicative in this picture here. Those of you that know, this is from the movie School Days, the Spike Lee movie from 1988. Very good movie. And you have Lawrence Fishburne on the right, and you have Giancarlo Esposito on the left, and Tisha Campbell in the middle. And Brother Esposito was representing the frat brother on the college campus and interested in partying and prestige and ego and all of those types of things. And then Lawrence Fishburne's character was the activist on the campus. Like, I related to that when I saw that movie, because that's what I was when I was on the college campus. And so in this scene, if you remember the movie, to me, it's my favorite part of the movie. Lawrence Fishburne says to the brother, you need to wake up. And he replies back, we are unquestionably Black Americans. You take that mumbo jumbo back to Africa. And I thought that was being a young man, I was 25 when this movie came out. I remember being in the theater watching it and being new to the All African People's Revolutionary Party and doing work around our identity. It really resonated with me because so many people had responses for me during that time that he articulated in that movie. So it was like really reflective of what was going on in my life at that time. And I have this picture on here because I want to make the point that this confusion is not new. Like, a lot of us think that somebody said we're indigenous to the Western Hemisphere. Wow, that's new information. No, these kind of backward philosophies have been around for a long time. This particular movie here is 33 years old. So this has always been a struggle. It's always been, and it will be for quite some time. But it's one that we're going to tackle head on. That's what we want to do. So, it's important to build on what Shukura said, that capitalism's gift to humanity is making us think that the immaterial is more important than the material. Or in other words, what you have in your head is more important than what's actually happening around you. That's what capitalism does. It makes us believe that. And so we actually believe that we have everything that we need inside of our heads to understand what's going on in the world. The problem with that is that the information that we have in our heads has been provided to us overwhelmingly by the people who want to oppress us mercilessly. So that's a serious contradiction for those of us who have a desire to be free, independent, and liberated, because everything that we've learned is infected. And so that's a real problem. So even though we think that we are objective in our approach, we are far from it. We're being influenced by all of these reactionary factors that have been designed to make us think a certain way about everything that we believe. And so we don't really understand some basic truths about Africa, for example, that are very common, but we don't know that, because we don't know how to do the research. And all we know is what we've been told or what we watched on a video, or we don't read anything. So we don't know. So here are just some basic truths, like understanding when we say truths about Africa, understanding Africa's matrilineal history, understanding Africa's matriarchal history, understanding our culture as African people, our humanistic, egalitarian, and collective culture as a people, understanding that every African in 2021 and beyond is reflective of the three experiences of African people: the traditional African experience, the Islamic African experience, the Judeo-Christian African experience. Every African in the world today, and every African that's ever lived, is a reflection of those three experiences. Now, we don't know how to think analytically. So when you say that, people, well, you're saying that I'm 33.33% traditional, 33.33% Islamic. I'm not a Muslim. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that all of us have some elements of those three components that make up the people that we are in our lives today. That's what we're saying. It doesn't matter if you know anything about Islam. It doesn't matter if you're atheist. It doesn't matter if you've never been to Africa. There's still some elements of all three of those historical elements of African life in your life today. But because we don't know anything about our history, we don't understand it. We think we're Americans, that we're just here in America and that's who we are. And that's why we have so many problems, because that's not who we are. It never has been, and it never will be. We don't know really anything about the slave trade. We don't know anything about the slave trade. We don't even understand the basic fact that when they rounded us up and kidnapped us, a lot of us, because they will tell you that, well, your African ancestors sold you into slavery. And a lot of us believe that because, again, we don't know how to research that and analyze it for ourselves. So all we know is what we've been told. So a lot of us believe that. We don't know that the overwhelming majority of the slave trade period was represented kidnappings, slave raids, as we call them, where the Europeans went throughout Africa and just grabbed us up and stole us and brought us to the Western Hemisphere. They didn't work with chiefs or anybody to do that because there were too many Europeans in Africa. They were there from Britain, France, Portugal, Belgium, Spain. They were there from all these places, Germany. And so the competition became too great to be trying to meet with the Ashanti chief or the Wolof chief or the Mandinka chief. They just started going out into the communities and just kidnapping people, you all. And when they did that, that means that they got us and brought us over here independent of who our families were, who our tribes were, independent of all of that. They didn't care about that. So that means that all of these Africans today who are in the Western Hemisphere, whether it's here in this backward country or Canada, or because most of the Africans in Canada are there because they ran there from here escaping slavery. Most of us don't even know that. We don't even know that. But that's the reality. The Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Virgin Islands, Bahamas, etc., and so forth. All of Central America, Mexico, Belize, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, all of those countries have African people in them. Y'all, most of us don't even know that. South America, Brazil, all of those countries, Venezuela, African people. All of these places I just named, African people are in these places because we were kidnapped, stolen, and taken to those places to serve as slave labor. It doesn't matter what part of the Western Hemisphere you're in. That's our history. So you have family members in all of those places. You have family members that speak Portuguese and have never spoken English. You have biological family members who speak Spanish, have never spoken English. You have people all over the Western Hemisphere who are your relatives, and you don't even know that because these people have convinced you that, well, you're just American. Everything you are is here on this plantation, and you just don't need to look any farther than our plantation to know who you are. We don't know anything about these things. The truth about plantation life, not just in the Americas, I mean, not just in the United Snakes of America, but all over the Americas, we had plantations. Because you got, and this is why we reiterate, it doesn't matter if you have these bourgeois degrees or not, because you got idiots like Cornel West running around talking about other Black people in the Western Hemisphere didn't experience slavery like we did here in this country. Now, what kind of idiot is he to make a dumb statement like that? Now, I have traveled throughout the Caribbean. I've seen slave plantations in the Caribbean. I've seen them in the southern US. I've seen the slave dungeons throughout Africa. So I can tell you that there is no such thing as a good slave experience. That's like saying somebody one day takes a knife and stabs you with it and steals everything from you. You recover from that and then go out and someone shoots you with a gun and steals everything from you. Well, the stabbing, that's a better experience than getting shot. I mean, that's only a fool would talk like that. And that's what a person sounds like to me. Well, they didn't have as bad a slave experience. Slavery was terrible for our people everywhere on earth. And we endured it. We persevered through it. We did things like learn how to cook beans and tortillas on the plantations in Central South America. We learned how to fry chicken and fish on the plantations here in the United States of America. We took nothing and were creative because, again, I already told you, our culture is humanistic and collective and egalitarian. So that's why we knew how to take these things and develop a way to live and survive so that our people could have a future. But we don't know anything about what we did on the plantation. Nothing. The only thing we know is what we've learned from these slave movies that have come out of Hollywood, because we don't study it. We don't read about it. We haven't read any of the books about it. We haven't read Du Bois's The World in Africa. We haven't read Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilizations. We haven't read John James' books, any of that stuff. Dr. Ben, Joe Connon, John Henrik Clark. We haven't studied Cheikh Anta Diop. We don't even know who these people are. So I'm not attacking you if you don't know. I'm just saying that we got to stop this fantasy existence where everybody tries to act like everybody knows what happened, because nobody really knows what happened other than a few people who have taken the time to figure it out. So that's very important that we do that. I mean, so many Africans are getting these DNA tests. And I talked to one the other, show you how insane this whole thing is. I talked to one the other day and they told me, well, my people are indigenous to Africa. And I'm like, well, where's your proof? Well, I took a DNA test and then they hadn't gotten the results. Then they got the results. I didn't hear from them. So I reached out to them, because you're not going to pass this nonsense off on me. I reached out to them and I said, so what are the results of your test? Oh, well, it said that I came from Nigeria. I said, well, I thought you were indigenous to the West. I mean, you're the one that paid hundreds of dollars to these capitalist corporations to get the DNA test. I would never do that, but you did. So I thought that, where was your evidence that you were, how do you explain that based on what you were telling me the other day? Well, these tests can't be trusted. I said, yeah, but they were trusted enough for you to pay $400. I would never do that, but you did that. So it's trusted enough to do. So basically what this person was saying is that, science is only good to them when it reaches the conclusion they want it to reach. So, that clearly that's very problematic. And, this another thing that's really interesting and strange is this concept that, so Europeans hate us because we're Africans, because we're Black. In other words, that's how people say it. Well, they hate us because we're Black. They just hate. And this whole thing of Blackness and whiteness and that kind of confusion. Look, there's no Blackness and whiteness. What there is Africa, and Africa being exploited. And because this wealth of this Western civilization, the United States of America, was built and sustained on exploiting Africa, they have to make sure that we never realize that we're Africans connected to Africa, because they know, even though we don't, that the minute we wake up and recognize our connection to Africa, we're going to start asking some very important questions. Like, why are we so poor, but the place where we come from has all the riches? That's a very basic question that none of us ever think to ask, because they got us so confused in terms of how we see the world. We're just happy to get a Lexus and make a payment, get a Tesla and make a payment for it that we can't afford. We don't even think, well, the car, everything that goes into making the damn car comes from Africa. I come from Africa. So why am I not controlling the production of the damn Tesla instead of just going underwater every month, making a payment to have one that I can't afford? We don't ask those questions because they got us confused. So it has nothing to do with us being Black. Everything these people do is imitating us being Black. So clearly they don't hate being Black. Clearly this is a much bigger question than that. But because they've got us so confused about who we are, we don't think and we don't understand what the true contradictions are. Sickle cell anemia, what the hell is that? Sickle cell anemia, most of us if we don't have sickle cell anemia, we have the trait for sickle cell anemia, and we don't have any idea what it is. What is sickle cell anemia? What it is that your blood cells mutate to a point where it becomes something your body is unable to process, and it creates all types of problems. The reason why your cells mutate as African people, Europeans by and large don't get sickle cell anemia. Why is that? Because the reason why your cells mutate is because it was the body's physiological reaction to malaria, which is something that's commonly something we face in Africa. And because we've only been in the Western Hemisphere 500 years, our bodies still reflect that reality, whether we're in the United States or any other part of the Western Hemisphere. Sickle cell anemia is an issue. And that is the reason why. For Africans, I've had Africans tell me I'm not African and they got sickle cell anemia. And I'm like, I don't even know how to talk to this. I mean, this is so ignorant. I don't even know how to talk to you about this. Most of us, somebody in our house who's an elder matriarch, we call them mama. We don't know enough of our history to understand that mama is the word mother in Swahili. Now, the slave master did the absolute best that they could to prevent our culture from passing down through the generations. But clearly, there's some things that are going to slip through. Mama is one of those things. Another thing is you don't see any Europeans anywhere communicating non-verbally the way African people do. What am I talking about? This food is good. That woman looks good. That man looks good. That person looks good. Somebody doing something they're not supposed to be doing. Why? You see Europeans doing that? Of course you don't. Because there are whole tribes in Africa, you all, who communicate like that. The Hottentots and other ethnic groupings in Africa communicate like that. That's where we got it from here. Why? Because we are Africans. We have always been Africans. We will always be Africans. The only problem is we don't know it. Now, linguists have said for decades, European linguists, African linguists, indigenous linguists, Asian linguists, people that study language, as professionals and do this, they have acknowledged for years, the studies are all out there. I've looked at them. They've acknowledged for years that the reason why we don't say words with ER, we say them with A, like the N word, for example, or like I'll say trigger. We don't say trigger, we say the trigger. We don't say, that's how we talk. And the reason why we talk like that, we don't say mother, my mother and father. We say my mother and father. The reason why we talk like that is because most of our African languages don't have an equivalent languages like Hausa and Fulani and Akan and Fanti, they don't have the equivalent of that ER. So we're interpreting, since we learned English through violence, we're interpreting the words based on how we were best able to translate them based on our social conditions. So my point, family, is this is just quick examples. I can go on all day giving you examples like this, but we don't know that about the ER because we don't study. We don't know that about mama and because we don't study. We don't know that about sickle cell anemia. We don't know any of the stuff I'm talked about because we don't study who we are. So there are challenges that need to be discussed in terms of these lies that we function off of. Number one, this concept that we're indigenous to the Western Hemisphere is extremely disrespectful to the actual indigenous people, because basically you're erasing them from who they are and their rights to this land. This land was stolen from them, but we don't study that, so we don't even know that. Europeans got us, oh, it's not been stolen. Instead, we were always here. That takes them off the hook. We're taking them off the hook. We don't even realize how insane the whole thing is. It's very disrespectful to them and thus weakening their movement, because it's important that we acknowledge that this is their land, because that's the prerequisite to creating the consciousness for them to get their land back. And if you're walking around here and you're talking about, well, I'm an American, then what you're saying is that it's, even if you say you're African American, you're still saying this is your land. So you're claiming a stolen property that belongs to other people. And so you're an accomplice to the colonial process to steal these people's land. You're helping the theft happen. You're helping maintain the theft when you use that American to describe yourself. That's what you're doing. Very disrespectful. And it's disrespectful to us and our people and our legacy and our history. And it weakens our movement. It weakens our Pan-African movement, because what it does is it creates disunity among our people. When we say we're not the same people because they were born in a different part of the world than I was, we're not the same people. This is so beneficial to our enemies. This is exactly what our enemies want to see happen, is for us to take this kind of position. Because when we do that, then what we're doing is we're making it so much more difficult for our people to come into a clear vision of why we're in the situation we're in, because how Africa has been exploited. And instead, it turns us against one another, which again, you're turning against people who are probably biologically related to you. I mean, it's just maddening how insane it is. And then, like I said, the ignorance promotes disunity, and this disunity serves the people who benefit from our oppression. You cannot tell us any way that you saying something that creates disunity among our people does something to make us stronger as a people. It doesn't even help make Africans in the United States stronger. It does nothing to help us get stronger. All it does is create a cover for us being intellectually lazy. We don't have to study. We can just say, well, this is what I believe because I want to believe it. And we don't have to prove anything. Like Shukura said, we don't have to, evidence doesn't matter. You know, and then we want to sit here and talk about people that support Trump. We do the same thing with this question. That's exactly what we're doing. We're doing the same thing that the dumb Trump people do, which makes us just as dumb. Unity is our best weapon. That's the thing that we will allow us to defeat our enemies. And that means we cannot accept the narrative of our enemies that we're different people just because they scattered us to different places. If your family was kidnapped and taken to different houses, and then when you saw your family again, they're like, you're not a part of my family, you would think they were insane. Well, that's how insane we are today, saying that, because that's exactly what our situation is. But that's how a lot of us see it. Well, we're not the same people. That serves our enemies, because then that person is not going to unite with you to fight the enemy to bring the family back together. Well, this person who believes we're not the same people because we were scattered in different places by our colonizer is not going to unite with you to link up to fight enemies to get our self-determination back. So unity is our best weapon. There's no scenario where anything other than unity helps us move in the forward direction that we need to move in. And so, since we always love to compare ourselves to other people based on groundless and baseless realities, we love to compare ourselves to Asian folks. Well, they pool their money. They sleep 15 in a house, which is not true. That's not how you get money and buy businesses. That's a concept believed by people that don't understand capitalism, who say that, because the IRS, you have to show them where you got $10,000 cash. So these lies that people keep telling, well, they put $50,000 under their mat, they save, they work. Like somebody making minimum wage is gonna save $50,000 living in this capitalist society. It's not realistic, you all. But yet we believe this nonsense. And the minute you go into the place to buy property with $50,000 cash, they gotta report that to the IRS, and they gonna come and take a big chunk of that. So that's not real for those of us that understand economics. It's only real for people that don't know what the hell they're talking about. But since you all do that, you love to compare yourselves to Asians and indigenous people and Arab people and everybody else, then make this comparison. Why is it that all of those people have a connection to their history and their culture, but yet we are the only people that believe we can progress without being connected to our history and culture? Make that comparison, because that's a legitimate comparison to make. We cannot advance being disconnected from our mother Africa. Nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is even attempting to do that except us. And then we wonder why we struggle so much. We don't know how to be unified. Well, of course you don't, because you've been turned against your mother, which means you're automatically going to be turned against each other. So how the hell are you going to come together to do anything? That's the first step to making that happen, is you got to recognize who your mother is. And then when you do that, then you recognize that you're siblings. Then you can come together and build and make things happen. No one has made significant contributions to their people, relying primarily on the resources of the enemy for our education. We rely on our enemy to educate us, and then we wonder why we're so confused. We don't belong to independent political education programs. Most of us don't. That's a fact. So that means if you don't, you're relying on your enemy. You're watching their news, and you think that you're able to dissect what they're saying, but you don't. All the information you have is what they're giving you. So you have no choice but to believe what they tell you. I don't care what you say. You have to believe it. You don't have anything independent. And no national liberation movement has ever had capitalism as its base. So anybody talking about liberating any people and not talking about capitalism is not talking about liberating any people. Just keep that in mind. That's a fact. So what we close on today, you all, is obviously we have got to get people involved in these political education processes. So I have a number of things I'm going to share with you today that are designed to give people an initial boost in political education, meaning independent, mass, revolutionary education, not education coming from the capitalist system. So we have our ancestors' voices every week. We invite you to continue to join us. We ask you, please tell people, bring people, invite people to come and join us. Next week, August 22nd, 4:05 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to be talking about the legitimate concern versus skepticism about COVID vaccinations. We're going to talk about why oppressed people don't trust anything the government says and why that's valid. We're not taking a position on vaccinations. That's not the point. So don't be confused. We're talking about why people don't trust what this government says and why there's a valid history for that. So join us for that. Please tell people. Go to aprp-intl.org. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We invite you to go there. We invite you to go to abetterworld.me. Donate while you're there. All of these videos are housed there. You can go back and look at them. There's articles there and a lot of other good information. So do that. I'm an editor for the Hood Communist Collective, and we come out every Thursday with articles. So subscribe to that and our newsletter. And then we have a bi-monthly Telegram event. You can download Telegram free on your app store, on your phone, and join us every other Thursday, not this Thursday, but the next Thursday. We had a wonderful session a couple of days ago about Black August. So we invite you to join us on that. You can participate, you can speak, you can ask questions, you can give comments, do whatever. So we invite you to do that. The APRP has a number of broadcasts going. The Pontula broadcast on Mondays, Revolutionary African Women, the last Saturday of the month, the Forward Ever broadcast on Spotify, APRP New Mexico news broadcast every Thursday at noon Mountain Time. And we invite you to continue to buy my book in groups, A Guide for Organized Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. And I just want to close by saying that a young European woman wanted to join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We're not mad at her. I mean, that's great. She recognizes the truth. And so she came to us and wanted to participate and join. And we had to inform her, like, this is an African organization. Like, we're trying to deconstruct colonialism, so you cannot join our party. But we are for the organization of the oppressed masses. So I'm saying this because what my book talks about is how we organize against empire. And so I'm working with this young woman. And what I told her is go get some European folks and I'll help you devise a plan to create a political education program and organize them. And so we're doing that because we want to get free. And we recognize that if European people are not organized, the capitalist system is going to do what it's always done, use them against us. So it serves our interest for them to be properly politically organized. So that's what the book is about. We hope you continue to support all of these venues and that you come back next week and please bring people, let people know about these things. Very, very important. And you go to these sites, there'll be plenty of books that you can read. We can talk to you about political education on a much higher level. We thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. We ask you to please be careful out here because you can't believe anything these people are telling you. So please be careful and please make sure that you take care of yourselves and each other. Forward ever, backwards never. Smash capitalism, smash patriarchy, smash homophobia. Africa will be free, unified, and socialist. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.